We often hear that love, kindness, and generosity are the greatest virtues a human being can embody. And that is true, but what happens when kindness crosses the line into self-destruction? Well, too many people live under the belief that in order to be a good friend, a loyal partner, or a dutiful family member, they must give endlessly, no matter the cost to themselves. This mindset is noble in intention but dangerous in practice, because when you burn yourself out for others, you end up with nothing left to give, not to them and not to yourself. Consider this: if someone constantly gives without pause, they eventually become drained. Emotionally, this looks like resentment, feeling unappreciated, taken for granted, or invisible. Physically, it shows up as fatigue, stress, or even illness. Mentally, it becomes self-doubt and anxiety. People who never set boundaries often find themselves asking, "Why does no one care about me the way I care about them?" But the hard truth is, you have trained people to take because you never taught them where to stop. Boundaries are not walls that keep love out. They are doors that allow healthy relationships in. Think of it this way: if you keep pouring from your cup and never refill it, eventually the cup will be empty. And when it's empty, not only do you suffer, but those who relied on you also find themselves without support. In trying to be everything for everyone, you risk being nothing for yourself. That's the hidden cost of self-sacrifice without limits. Another dangerous aspect of constant self-sacrifice is the erosion of identity. When you're always saying yes to others, you're often saying no to yourself. You miss opportunities for growth and authenticity because you've convinced yourself that your worth is measured by how much you do for others. But the truth is, your worth is not in your sacrifices, it's in who you are. If you lose yourself while trying to serve everyone else, what good is left? Healthy boundaries are acts of self-respect, not selfishness. Saying no doesn't mean you don't care. It means you recognize that your energy and time are finite, and you choose to give them wisely. Imagine a parent who works tirelessly to provide for their children, but never rests, eats well, or takes care of their own mental health. Eventually, they collapse, and who suffers then? Both the parent and the children. By protecting yourself, you are protecting the ones you love. The key is balance. Generosity must be balanced with self-preservation. Compassion must be balanced with courage. You cannot let guilt or fear of rejection push you into overgiving. People who truly value you will respect your boundaries. And those who don't were never meant to stay in your circle. Remember, it is not your responsibility to carry everyone else's burdens on your shoulders. You can support, guide, and encourage without destroying yourself in the process. The cost of self-sacrifice without boundaries is too high. And the most powerful way to love others is not to burn yourself down for them, but to shine alongside them. In the end, beauty is never about perfection. It is about authenticity. It is about life in all its messy, unpolished, unpredictable glory. And when you truly understand that, you stop chasing an impossible ideal and begin to recognize the extraordinary in what already exists. Remember this: the cracks, the scars, the imperfections, they are not flaws. They are the signature of life itself. They are what make a beautiful thing unforgettable. If imperfections are what make beauty unique, then they are also what make growth inevitable. You see, life is not a static canvas. It is a process, a series of challenges, errors, and recoveries. Nothing of lasting value emerges without friction, without the struggle to overcome limitations, without confronting the cracks in our own character. In psychology, there's a principle that speaks to this. We learn and grow not in moments of ease, but in moments of tension, conflict, and failure. The imperfections in our lives, the mistakes, the missteps, the moments when we fall short, these are not just obstacles to overcome. They are the raw material of transformation. Think about the human body. Muscle grows because it is stressed. The immune system strengthens when it encounters challenges. Bones become denser when subjected to strain. And nature itself thrives through adaptation to imperfection, and the same principle applies to our minds, our relationships, and our ambitions. Every failure, every setback, every moment where we feel inadequate is an opportunity to stretch, to expand, to become something stronger and wiser. The imperfections are not evidence that we are failing. They are evidence that we are alive, that we are engaging with life at a meaningful level. Philosophically, this idea runs deep. Many spiritual and existential traditions teach that suffering is inseparable from growth. The cracks in the world, the moments of loss, disappointment, and frustration are not accidents. They are part of the structure of life itself. To resist them completely is to resist reality, and in doing so, we stunt our own development. But to face them, to work with them, to learn from them, is to participate in the creation of something enduring and profound. There is an almost poetic justice in this. What initially feels like imperfection, weakness, or inadequacy often becomes the very source of our strength and the wellspring of our creativity. Consider relationships. No connection between two people is ever perfect. Misunderstandings arise, emotions flare, expectations collide, and yet these very imperfections are what give relationships depth, meaning, and resilience. When we work through conflict, when we confront our own shortcomings and meet the shortcomings of others with patience and understanding, we build trust, empathy, and intimacy. Without these imperfect moments, relationships would remain superficial. They would be polite, sterile, and devoid of the richness that comes from navigating the complexities of human experience. Together, the lesson is clear. Growth and transformation are inseparable from imperfection, and the more we resist the latter, the less we allow the former to occur. Psychologically, embracing imperfection requires courage. It requires a willingness to see failure not as a judgment on our worth, but as feedback, as data, as a guidepost pointing us toward improvement. It means understanding that perfection is not a prerequisite for success or contribution. It is a mirage. Real achievement, the kind that leaves a mark on the world, emerges from iteration, experimentation, and adaptation. Each misstep teaches us something we would never learn in a flawless attempt. Each obstacle forces us to discover resources within ourselves we did not know existed. Each imperfection, when approached with awareness and humility, becomes a teacher. There's also a subtle but profound beauty in this process. Growth is never linear. Transformation does not occur along a straight, predictable path. It is irregular, uneven, and often unpredictable, much like life itself. We may stumble backward before moving forward. We may break before we heal. But in this unevenness, in this very imperfection, lies the story of our development. If we demand smooth, uninterrupted progress, we rob ourselves of the richness that comes from grappling with complexity, from confronting our limitations, from learning to rise again after falling. And this principle extends beyond the individual. Communities, organizations, and societies evolve through imperfection. Systems that fail reveal weaknesses that must be addressed. Movements that stumble teach resilience. History itself is full of moments where human imperfection, greed, error, miscalculation became the catalyst for innovation, reflection, and profound change. The imperfections are not accidents to lament. They are the conditions under which growth occurs. So when you encounter your own limitations, your mistakes, or the messy, unpredictable moments in life, recognize them as opportunities rather than setbacks. Every imperfection is a doorway. Every failure is a teacher. Every scar in yourself or in the world around you is evidence that something transformative is happening. If you can approach life this way, you stop fearing imperfection and start using it as a foundation for growth. You begin to understand that life does not need to be perfect for you to evolve. And that beauty, real lasting beauty, emerges precisely where imperfection and effort meet. Ultimately, the lesson is simple but profound. Growth is not something you stumble into. It is something you cultivate by embracing imperfection. Transformation is not a product of flawlessness, but of engagement with the imperfect, messy, unpredictable realities of existence. The cracks, the failures, the setbacks, they are not obstacles to life. They are life itself actively shaping you into someone stronger, wiser, and more alive than you were before. So step into your imperfections, lean into them, explore them, learn from them. In doing so, you are not avoiding failure. You are using it as a ladder, a bridge, and a guide. You are transforming your flaws into power, your mistakes into insight, and your imperfections into the very essence of who you are becoming. And in that process, you will discover a truth that is both humbling and liberating. The things we fear most about ourselves are often the very sources of our greatest growth. When we think about perfection, we often imagine it as a final state, a place where nothing is left to improve, a form that cannot change. It is static, frozen, and unyielding, but beauty, true beauty, is never static. It is alive. It moves, it breathes, it grows, and it transforms. To pursue perfection as the ultimate goal is to chase something that cannot exist in the dynamic reality of life. Perfection, by its nature, resists change. Beauty, on the other hand, thrives on it. It is the play of light on water, the unexpected note in a melody, the curve of a tree shaped by wind and time. To understand this distinction is to understand why a beautiful life, a meaningful creation, or a profound relationship cannot emerge from the sterile pursuit of flawlessness. Look at nature. There is nothing perfectly symmetrical in the natural world. Mountains are jagged, rivers bend unpredictably, trees grow twisted by the wind, and flowers bloom at different rates and in different shapes. Yet we call these things beautiful. Why? Because their imperfection is evidence of life, of adaptation, of resilience. The irregularities, the unpredictability, the constant motion, these are not flaws. They are the indicators that life is happening. And when we try to impose perfection, when we try to freeze things into a predictable, controllable mold, we rob them of the vitality that makes them meaningful. The same is true in our own lives. A life that seeks to be perfect in every detail, where mistakes are erased, emotions are controlled, and experiences are sanitized, loses the richness that comes from spontaneity, unpredictability, and imperfection. There is a psychological insight here as well. Humans are wired to respond to change, contrast, and unpredictability. Our attention is drawn to what is dynamic and evolving, not to what is static and unchanging. A relationship that never encounters conflict or growth becomes dull. A career that never faces challenge or adaptation becomes stagnant. Even our own personal development requires movement, feedback, and transformation. Perfection may seem desirable because it promises control and certainty, but in reality, it leads to stagnation. Beauty, alive and evolving, requires us to embrace uncertainty, to experiment, to risk failure, and to welcome imperfection. Consider art or music. Once more, a perfectly executed piece, while technically impressive, often fails to move us deeply. It lacks tension, surprise, and contrast, the very elements that evoke emotion. A painting with uneven brushstrokes, a song with an unexpected chord, or a poem that bends the rules of language resonates because it reflects the vitality of life itself. Beauty is alive because it changes with time, context, and perspective. What we see, hear, or feel in a moment is never fixed. It evolves as we evolve. To chase perfection is to try to halt that evolution, to fix something inherently dynamic into a lifeless state. Philosophically, this idea is profound. Life itself is not designed to be perfect. It is designed to be lived. Every imperfection, every mistake, every moment of uncertainty is evidence that we are engaging with the world, learning, adapting, and growing. To resist imperfection is to resist life. To embrace it is to recognize that the beauty of existence is not in control, but in responsiveness. So, the cracks, the uneven edges, the unpredictable turns, these are what keep life vibrant and alive. They allow for creativity, connection, and meaning. This understanding changes how we approach our own journeys. We do not need to wait until we are perfect to start living fully. We do not need to achieve flawless success, flawless relationships, or flawless self-image to find meaning, impact, or joy. Life is not a static target, it is an unfolding process. Each moment, each effort, each act of courage or vulnerability adds to the living tapestry of our experience. By accepting that beauty is alive and dynamic, we stop chasing the impossible ideal of perfection and start engaging fully with what is real, present, and treasured. Even on a practical level, embracing this idea liberates us. When we understand that life's beauty is alive, we allow ourselves to experiment, to take risks, to innovate. Perfection imposes fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of the unknown. But recognizing that beauty emerges in the dynamic interplay of effort, imperfection, and adaptation frees us from those fears. We begin to act, to create, to love, and to live not in spite of imperfection, but because of it. We start to see that life is not a problem to be solved, but a living work to be engaged with, moment by moment. So let us remember, perfection is static, but beauty is alive. It exists in the movement, the unpredictability, the richness of experience that unfolds in time. To live fully, to create profoundly, and to connect meaningfully, we must stop trying to freeze life into flawless symmetry. We must allow ourselves and the world around us to breathe, to change, and to grow. The cracks, the shifts, the unpredictable turns are not imperfections to fear. They are the very signals of life, evidence that something real, vibrant, and beautiful is happening. And in that realization lies we are free to create, to act, to love, and to experience, knowing that the vitality of life comes not from perfection, but from its ever-changing, ever-evolving, infinitely imperfect